So, good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, everybody. I'm Marina Galvani. I'm the art curator of the World Bank. So, welcome to the first interactive event of We Are Africa, the power of women and youth. I'm here today with two colleagues from the Africa region, Ruti Ejangue and Martin de Simone, who will conduct with me this interactive journey through an exploration of the role of women and the challenges of women and girls in Africa. And from my team, Sarah Metcalf and Elena Grant, who will facilitate this experience. I would like to remind everybody to please mute your microphone. Our host can mute you if you are connected with a computer, but cannot mute you if you're on the phone. So please mute yourself. This makes for everybody the possibility to hear much more manageable. So let me give you a background. Why we have this exhibition and what is We Are Africa. So first of all, for those of you who are not familiar with the work of the art program, the art program of the World Bank essentially is something unique, if you want, in the horizon of cultural entities or artistic entities within a development organization, in the sense that we work always on the crossroad between development, social justice, and international communication, using mostly visual languages to explore different topics that are corporate priorities for the World Bank Group. We have been tackling different topics over the years, from environment, climate change, gender-based violence, child labor, and geographic focuses. But our first big regional focus was Africa in 2008, when we organized an exhibition titled Africa Now, a continent on the move, which was really a groundbreaking project. It involved 32 countries and opened the doors for many artists whose career really took a leap thanks to this exhibition. And they were made unknown to the world of other curators and mostly to the market, and were propelled into notoriety and to the possibility to sustain a career in the long run. So 10 years after, we were approached by the regional vice presidency exactly as we did in 2008, and we were asked to explore again, 10 years after Africa Now, an exhibition in which we were exploring the continent from a different perspective. What we had been doing in 2008 was to try to look at Africa from the point of view of challenging stereotypes about Africa. For this reason, we chose the title Africa Now. So we wanted to challenge certain, if you want, stultified images of Africa. And what we found exploring 10 years later was that many of the stereotypes about Africa have disappeared. But what became much more prominent was the necessity of bringing into the discourse other actors into the discourse of the development debate, and more specifically, women and youth. And so the exhibition started to morph in that direction. And on this, there was another component came into consideration, which was the interest expressed by the executive director, ADS 14, who represent 22 countries in the board of directors, to give voice to almost 600 million people and show the diversity of our constituency. And many of these countries have not been, if you want, adequately presented during Africa Now. So we thought it would be a very good match. These countries are Botswana, Burundi, Eritrea, Eswatini, Ethiopia, the Gambia, Kenya, Lesotho, Liberia, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Rwanda, Seychelles, Sierra Leone, Somalia, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. So having this different component, we started to think very carefully on how to design this exhibition. The exhibition for a development institution is an exhibition that has to have development purpose. So we wanted to approach it from the point of view of what were the priorities for the regional vice presidency. And more specifically, the core, if you want, of the exhibition was the Africa Human Capital Plan and Capital Agenda. That seemed to us a match made in heaven. So we were thinking to invite artists to Washington, D.C. to focus on female artists, to have the component clearly of the women representation, as we were saying, the debate, and as well have the physical presence of the artists here so that we could have really a dialogue with the staff of the bank, and the artists will become a sort of ambassadors, not only of their own personal journey, but of their, if you want, representation of their country, or at least of their group of people whose art they represent. So the important aspect of artists, in effect, is that they are a sort of social barometers, and they are alchemists of the future, I like to say. So they are people who are really, really essential in understanding the future. But then COVID happened, and so we had to reinvent the exhibition. And what you see now is an exhibition in theory, meaning what we will present now with this event and the one I will follow every month through May to 2021 is a series of monthly events in which we have artists or young bloggers who will present the point of view of women and the point of view of youth of Africa about different aspects of the development agenda. Again, through the lenses of the human capital program of the World Bank. So I would like just to show briefly one artwork, if I may ask you, which is not part of the exhibition, but I think is very emblematic of what we are talking about, which is a photo by Angele Samba, a photographer from Cameroon, part of the Africa Now exhibition. And you see is a woman, and the roots of this big tree are leaning on her naked shoulders. And I think that tells everything what this exhibition is about. So I would like to pass the mic to Ruti, who will give us the context in which we are moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Good afternoon and good evening to everyone once again. I would just like to start off by thanking Marina, Kofi, and Martin for including me in this presentation on the power of women and youth in Africa, which is always a timely conversation to have. Just to give you a bit of context on the World Bank's Africa Human Capital Plan before we delve into the presentation here. The plan was actually launched last year in April. And it's really an ambitious plan with clear targets and commitments to boost Africa's potential through its human capital. So this includes health, knowledge, skills, and the resilience of its people. When we focus specifically on women and girls, this plan really includes a strong push to empower women and accelerate Africa's demographic transition. And we'll discuss a few examples throughout the presentation as well. And since the plan has been launched, 2.2 billion of financing has been aimed at furthering African women's agency, health, education, and employment opportunities. Go on to the next slide. All right, so the human capital challenges in sub-Saharan Africa are very urgent, and this is based on the World Bank Human Capital Index, which measures the human capital that a child born today can expect to achieve by their 18th birthday. And it's important to note that this considers the risk of poor health and education prevailing in the country where this child lives. Currently, 25 of the bottom 30 countries are in Africa, which just shows you how urgent the challenges are. Now, focusing specifically on women and girls, a girl born today in Africa will only be 38% as productive as they could be under the benchmark of complete education and full health. I'll expand a bit more on that, on the factors that lead to this in my next slides, but it just means that a lot of girls throughout the region are not meeting their full potential. And so in order to get a better idea of these human capital challenges and how they disproportionately affect women, let's start from the beginning of a girl's life. Every girl that's born in Africa has the probability that she will not survive to see the age of 5. And the exact number is 6 out of 100 girls. In general, there are at least 2.9 million children under 5 that die every year in the region. And this is often linked to issues such as malnutrition, poor hygiene practices, or unsafe drinking water or food. And even if she does make it till the age of 5, there is a strong possibility that she could probably suffer from stunting, which could then adversely impact, how productive she is in society. And then in the long term, that could impact a country's economic outlook. Based on the statistics here, it's 30 out of 100 girls in sub-Saharan Africa suffer from stunting. And Africa is actually one of the only regions that has seen an increase in the number of children stunted, despite the decrease in the global prevalence of stunting. So similarly, the major factors linked to this are also undernutrition, a lack of access to health, and other essential services. We see that health is really a key challenge that impacts girls throughout the region. Now moving on to education. In terms of education, as we know, girls are more disadvantaged than boys when it comes to access. And these are trends that we see in different countries throughout the world. And sub-Saharan Africa is known, it's not immune to this challenge. The number of adolescent girls out of school in Africa is higher compared to anywhere else in the world. And girls can expect to complete 7 years of school by their 18th birthday, but they really only learn for the equivalent of 4.3 years. And just to give you an overall picture, 97 million children in sub-Saharan Africa are actually out of school. And if they are in school, they're not meeting the benchmark of complete education. And for women, these are linked to several factors: child marriage, which I'll talk about later, poverty, and other social norms that hurt them disproportionately. Now, let's say if this girl actually does reach adulthood, there's a low adult survival rate for women because when they are ready to reach the labor market, 24 out of 100 women will not reach the age of 60. And here we see that even once a girl reaches adulthood, she faces additional challenges. I'll let Marina continue the rest of the presentation.
These were very sobering statistics. And so going to the artworks, we have here an artwork from Sudan created by Enas Satir. She's part of a duo of sisters, Enas and Ala Satir. These are two portraits, self-portraits of the sisters. Enas and Ala were my first choice as the artist to present for this you want excerpt from the exhibition, because they personify different aspects of what has been described by Ruti so far. First of all, they are women who are growing in a very conservative society, so they had to struggle in order to be able to express themselves. And you will hear from a self-interview that Enas gave us that the main challenge for her was really fighting with herself and the limit that her own education was putting on her own self-expression. And then there was the question of representing themselves as social personas. So being part of the political discourse, and you will see more in the works by Ala later on. And later on, being part of diaspora. So both of them decided to leave their country to be able to pursue their artistic career. So if we can go to the next, Sarah, kindly. Sarah? And we can see part of her interview. This interview is part, when we are preparing, is a part of the self-interviews we are conducting with several of the artists, part of the exhibition. We're presenting their point of view, their experience about, as I said, struggles in finding their space in society.
Something that
Sarah, we cannot hear Ina's voice. Let's skip the video. Let's go to the art. I can talk about her.
Cool. And we'll be having the video posted later for people to look at.
Yes. Yeah, we will have the video posted on the art program website. Let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the part that we have been missing, as I mentioned before, Inas is reflecting about the challenges she has faced growing up in a conservative society and mostly in a conservative family. So she had to deal with that in order to find her space to express herself as an artist. One of her form of expression is through this work on ceramic. You have seen the graphic work, but this works on ceramic. I would like to draw your attention to that on several levels. First of all, she's using ceramic. Traditionally, worldwide, women have been pushed towards more marginal art media for a variety of reasons. One is because they didn't have access to more expensive tools or materials, like oil on canvas, for example. Two, because they were not considered worthy of more expensive materials. And three, because the market will not accept product created by traditionally created by men. So ceramic was one of the materials used quite often by women. In addition, having functional objects like these bowls, these cups, is another area in which women have found themselves often, in the niches in which they find themselves often forced to create. This is given, if you want, a space for many feminist artists to create very original artworks. If you think even of Judith Chicago and her famous dinner table from the 70s, in which she set up a table for the famous women, is a feminist revisitation of the concept of having earthenware and something connected with food and sharing, which is, again, typically connected with women, as an art form. And in Judith Chicago case, something that will be destroyed and rotting away, so wasting. In the case of Enas, the issue is not destroying, is not wasting, but there is a very clear political satire here. The faces that she's painting on this ceramic are most grotesque. The songs are mostly humoristic, and they are mostly in reference to the cases of these women, the so-called working class, who are often victims of social norms that don't allow them to live life as they would like to live, especially in terms of, you want, personal liberties and autonomy in choice of partners or choice of life choices. I would like to draw your attention as well to the kind of line that she uses. You may remember her graphic work before. If you can compare to the work of her sister, if you can go to the next slide, Sarah, kindly. Yeah, you can see here Ala Satir, her sister. Ala has a different background. She trained as an architect. You can see the line is very different. It's much more controlled. It's much more repetitive. It's a pattern. There is a more geometrical and, if you want, constructed style. But as well, like with Enas, there is a strong social commentary here. She is referring to the protest during the 2017-2018, the protest in Sudan, in which the two sisters and many other artists participated in peaceful demonstrations against the government and frescoed many houses. And many of the depictions, especially by Allah, were of women who were considered one of the main victims of the situation. And so where the revolution, it was not only a revendication of freedom from the government, but a revendication of freedom for women in general. You can go on the next one, please. This is another one. Our hope was to bring both one of the two sisters to Washington. We had in the past an exhibition in which we invited graffiti artists to create something in the bank. There were graffiti artists from Latin America, so it would have been wonderful to have clearly an artist from Sudan to do something similar for this exhibition, COVID permitting. So I would like to show you this other work by Maria Naita, very different genre, clearly. She's an older artist. Unfortunately, she passed away last year. She was part of the exhibition Africa Now. So Maria Naita passed away last year, and the national newspaper in Kampala saluted her demise as the end of a national treasure, which I find absolutely moving and ironic in the same time, because I remember when I met with her in her studio in Kampala years ago, she was telling me how incredibly challenging had been her journey as an artist and a female artist in her country, and trying to make her voice heard, and especially being able to receive public commissions. If we can show the next slide, Sarah, please, like this one. So Maria wanted to work on big scale and very strong, if you want, powerful pieces. But essentially what she was creating most of the time were works like the previous sculpture you have seen, the one that is in a collection, and we have another painting by her in the collection, or more quote unquote feminine in style. So curved line, gentle line. The one before is an homage to her mentor, Francis Nangenda, and much less her own expression. This sculpture is much more figurative, as you can see in style. It's not even her own voice. Her own voice is much more abstract. So like many artists, she had to find a compromise between receiving commission and expressing her own voice. And she is one of the few women artists who managed to have a career as a public in the public domain. Can go the next one, kindly. Thank you. So this one and the next one, I want to bring to your attention, not very much for their artistic merits, but mostly for the subject matter. As you know, the tradition of stone sculpting, soapstone and springstone in Zimbabwe started, but now we're on the fourth generation, I think, of art. It started as an experiment by artists coming from outside of Zimbabwe, who inaugurated, German artists, who inaugurated a workshop, essentially to teach local women to do sculpting with soft kind of stone that was easier to manipulate than the harder stone that was used by men. And mostly what was created was a system of self-support that was helping women in moments of hardship, in creating funds for dowry, for sort of health assistance, etc., etc. But now, as I said, we are on the fourth generation. Both men and women are working in this field. There are some extraordinary artists. We have some of them in the collection, some less so. Many of them now are working clearly in a more derivative style for tourist market. But the reason I wanted to show this piece and the next one is for the subject matter, as I said, because both of them have to do with maternity. And it's another topic that is relevant for the human capital agenda that Ruti will touch upon. So if you can go to the next slide and the one afterwards. Thank you. Thank you. And then I would like to talk to you about Mia Collis. Mia Collis, together with a UK-born journalist based in Nairobi, created this series. She shapes the city. The cities of extraordinary women who are shaping Nairobi. So there are women who, in a sense or another, have been playing a role in defining this, Nairobi as a thriving city. We discovered Mia Collis when we presented an exhibition on gender-based violence, 1 in 3 in Kenya. And what we found very interesting was not only that the subject matter were women that were either survivors and agent of change in the gender-based violence area, but they were all women that had a very strong impact in their society. If you can go to the next one, kindly, Sarah. So the first one, for example, is a world champion athlete. She's not only an athlete, she created a center to help young women to enter into the, if you are in the fitness, in the mentality of doing fitness. And she founded her own apparel firm. Catherine is another one I found very fascinating because she was a school principal of a very prestigious private school, and until she discovered that most of her the mothers, especially single mothers of her pupils, were resorting to prostitution to pay for the tuition, and so she became an advocate for sex workers. Teresa used to be a bank worker, an executive that had been imprisoned, wrongly accused in an internal takeover in the company, and then became a champion for female convict, and so on and so forth. So all of them are really extraordinary women. The interesting part from an artistic standpoint is how they are portrayed. If you think the traditional portraiture stemming from the Northern European 14th and 15th century tradition is always to show the body with an element of their success. For men, clearly, because they were always the one presented as a social persona, with the sword or with the book, etc. For women, they were presented as a generic, beautiful people. So they were either mothers, or they were saints, or they were nuns, etc. These are women who don't have elements of their success in their hands. They don't have something showing what they are about. They have something extraordinary in themselves. So I think she is really capturing the essence of the particularity of their personalities in this social portraiture, which is something very, very, I think, very striking. You can go to the next one. And I would like to close this quick journey through some of the artworks with Hem Matsi, who is another artist we discovered through the exhibition on gender-based violence. Hem Matsi is a fashion designer from Namibia, but she is as well a social activist, and she created a program to raise awareness about violence against young women, more specifically against the phenomenon of child bride. She participated in the climbing of Mount Kilimanjaro as part of an initiative by the UN, and created this fashion line for which she created these two wedding dresses for the World Bank collection, 2 different wedding dresses for the World Bank collection. You will notice that the mannequin wearing the wedding dresses are painted in green, exactly because gender-based violence is universal, and so that in our eyes that was given the more universal color scheme you could think of. I think it's for you, Ruti. Oh no, sorry. And now we have Maggie. My mistake. So I understand that videos now are a challenge. So let me present Maggie to you very briefly. Another artist from Africa now. Margaret Ortino is an artist who very early on decided to become an entrepreneur. She realized that when she was trying to present her artworks to galleries, her main challenge was that she was not taken seriously, and she had no outlet for her artworks. So she made some very conscious decision of creating artworks that would be simple, that would be of high quality, and could be sold very easily. So she would create for sale. She became then, essentially her profession is to become an art promoter and a facilitator. And with that in mind, now she works both in Kenya and internationally. This is a series called The Elders. The title, she actually refers to them in Swahili, but she has the same series both in wood, in carved wood, which are part of the permanent collection, in metal as well. There is a series that is a reference to a nostalgic idea, if you want, of a more quiet life, where the elders are listened to and treated with respect instead of the wild urbanization in which the elders don't have any more space to be. The wood, as you can see, is both carved and she using pyrography as well to carve. And this is a technique that has been made used very widely by Elena Tsui, you know, the star artist from Nigeria/Ghana. So the reason I wanted to talk about Margaret is because she's a good example of what is happening now in the art market in Africa. Essentially, the art market has been dominated worldwide, has been dominated by white male artists forever. Only the last couple of decades, this has started to change. And more specifically, in the last less than 10 years, the situation of the market in Africa has changed in the sense that for the first time, female artists have sold more than male artists in terms of how much they sold for. In terms of how many artworks are being sold for, the number is still staggeringly in favor of male. There have been 680 sales versus 131. We're talking about auctions, so level. But the prices for female artists have been higher for the first time, as I said, in the last 10 years. The African market at the moment covers only 1% of the market share in the world. But what is interesting is the beginning of a momentum. And one of the reasons we have all this small exhibition and we're trying to present these artists is because it takes just a momentum, and then there's a ripple effect that can really open doors for other women. The issue especially for women artists, is that they're not only not represented in academia or in research or in galleries, etc. Is they're not represented among women, are not represented among buyers, because 70% of the students, according to the last research, for example, in the art field in South Africa, which statistically is the country with the highest number of female artists in the world, are women. But 70% of the artists represented by galleries are men. So this gives you an idea. In other parts of the world, it's even worse. So it's very, very important that we support in any way possible women artists. And if they become mentors to other women artists, or if we give space to other women artists, that creates a virtual effect that hopefully opens space to many, many other positive effects. I think Ruti is you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Sorry, I had an issue with my microphone, but just to expand on some of the profound and unique challenges that women and girls face in sub-Saharan Africa, you see here on this graph that the total fertility rate in Africa is about 4.8 children per woman, and it's the highest in the world. And it's important to note that this number is also decreasing slowly, as you can see. Similarly, the adolescent fertility rate is higher than any other region. The maternal mortality rate is 2.5 times higher than the average of the world. And in that same light, almost 4 out of 10 adolescent girls are out of school in the region, more than twice the global value. When we think about it, such factors, really create a broader rift of skills and education between girls and boys and restrict women's, opportunities when they are seeking for autonomy or economic independence throughout their lives. Next slide. So child marriage is a humanitarian crisis throughout sub-Saharan Africa. And according to the Human Rights Watch, nearly 4 in 10 young girls in sub-Saharan Africa were married off before the age of 18. And we see a connection here between the girls out of school and those getting married early. And this number of child brides is expected to double by 2050 if nothing is done. One of the key issues with this dangerous practice is that it's usually synonymous with a girl having to discontinue her education, potentially facing fatal consequences from early childbearing, and enduring various forms of physical and emotional abuse the younger she is, similar to what Marina had mentioned. And I'd also like to note that this year's Blog for Dev 2020 competition is actually based on the issue of ending child marriage in Africa. So please feel to check it out on the World Bank Africa webpage. The bloggers offer some really insightful and effective ways of how to target the practice, how to end the crisis. So moving on to jobs and entrepreneurship, in sub-Saharan Africa, women make up most entrepreneurs. Miriam mentioned that they dominate the art field, and yet the playing field is very unequal for them, especially in the sector of business. Women don't tend to receive the same benefits or business development that is available to men. For instance, when it comes to building credit, 65% of women in African economies face legal challenges. And when it involves, securing a loan, 43% of women receive a loan from any source compared to 48% of men, which shows you that there's like a 5% difference. In addition, females are also underrepresented in employment and skills programs. For instance, in Nigeria, only 20% of students in technical colleges are female. So I'll let Marina continue.
Thank you, Ruti. I find always fascinating that your numbers correspond to what the artists are saying. And I wanted to show these artworks because to me at least, they really mirrors the hardship you were talking about. These are composite portraits, psychological portraits by Beatrice New-Roger. When I met with her, she was explaining to me that she created these portraits interviewing many women. Many women were ashamed to show their pain and their suffering. All the reason that Ruti has described to us, and we have seen and we have experienced on our skin as well in some cases. So Beatrice created these composite portraits because in this way you're hiding the pain, you're hiding the joys as well, but you're hiding, and it becomes something very confused in the same time, it becomes something extremely rich. And if you can see, the head becomes something very big, almost detached from the body with a very elongated neck. So it's like the head with all the emotion and all the things is out there, taking leave from the rest of the body. These series of very large portraits that we have in the permanent collection, I think are, again, to me at least, a very strong reminders of what is going on emotionally. I would like as well talk about the work by Elias, the artist I showed at the beginning. One of their area of interest, which we wouldn't show in this very quick overview, is mental health. Mental health is definitely a big issue that we will not touch upon in this exhibition, but clearly with all the obstacles faced by women and girls is one aspect definitely that should be talked about. We can go to the next one. And then I wanted to show you this artwork, which is interesting in my eyes, again, because it has to do with the representation of women from an outsider, so from a man, and more specifically from a man who has, if you want, a mixed opinion about the role of women in a specific instance. This is referring to the disorders during the elections in Kenya. and that was a civil unrest, and so death and destruction. The piece is made with recuperated sheet metals from roofs that he collected. So he wanted to give life again to this destroyed property and created this large silhouette. What I find interesting, and Sarah, if I may ask you the courtesy to go to the next one and back. Yes, thank you. I would like for you to look at these two paintings, and then we go back. These two Baroque paintings. These are the typical representation, if you want, of righteous power. So on the right, you have Luca Giordano, the Archangel Michael. On the left, you have Artemisia, Giudice, and Oluferne. So the image of the angel, which technically is sexless, but clearly is a male, is very perfect. Is in the sky with the big wings, the sword, etc. She is in a dark environment. We're not so sure she's such a pure creature. The association of women with violence is always taken with some doubt. So can you go back to Patrick, please? So it's the same thing here. She is an angel with the evil horns and a machine gun. Yeah, controversial. Is she good? Is she bad? What was her role exactly? If you remember the frescoes, the graffiti by Ala Satir were showing the women engaged in the political if you want battles, but the image was very positive. It was, we are the one harassed the most affected by this. We want to be present. Here, the image is not so positive. So I'm not giving you an answer. I'm just showing you different interpretation of a similar phenomenon. You can go, and then it's Ruti.
Thank you, Marina. So what is the World Bank's strategy around increasing the human capital for women? Well, the strategy focuses on the 4 E's. We have educate, which is keeping girls in school and increasing their female education. We have enhanced health services, which is improving access to sexual and reproductive health care, including family planning programs. And then we have employ, which is promoting gender equity in female employment. And then empower, addressing social norms on gender and making women agents of change. So what exactly does this look like through a multi-sectoral approach where different global practices are involved? In terms of health and nutrition, this would take the form of campaigns to change behaviors and social norms regarding adolescents' access to services, girls' empowerment, and women's health. For education, this would involve keeping girls in school by increasing social, logistical, and cost barriers, that keep them away from school in the first place, including financial or in-kind incentives. For social protection and jobs, this would look like safety nets and empowerment activities, social registries and IDs to reach the most vulnerable. And we know that women and children typically make up that demographic. And then incentives to keep girls in school. So the different elements of the support framework that I just discussed are actually supported by strong evidence that has been tested, and I'll highlight just 3 examples for the purpose of the presentation. So according to a study published by DPER in 2002, providing family planning service, training, and community outreach was associated with a 15% reduction in the total fertility rate amongst married women in Ghana. In 1994, moving on to the next slide, a study about the Gambia. There was a radio program that focused specifically on family planning, and this helped to increase positive attitudes and knowledge about family planning and the use of modern methods. And this increase was actually from 10 to 27%, so we see that it's pretty significant. Lastly, a study in Kenya with a national cash transfer program reduced the risk of early sexual debut and teen pregnancy on adolescent girls. And this was done by increasing the enrollment of young women in schools and creating a financially stable household. So now that we've talked about the support framework and sort of the evidence that goes to back it up, we can shift to the operational examples to get a better understanding of what the 4 E's can actually look like in reality. So the Sahel Women's Empowerment and Demographic Development Project, or also known as SWED, is a really strong example of the World Bank support to women's empowerment and how the 4 E's are actually being implemented. SWED is a regional, multi-sectoral project targeting 10 countries technically. So there's Niger, Ivory Coast, Mali, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Chad, Guinea, Senegal, Benin, and Mauritania. And a key similarity that you notice between all these countries is that the risk of girls being exposed to child marriage, teenage pregnancy, and early school dropout is particularly high, which is why the program is so critical in the first place. And the interventions are actually divided into 3 buckets. So we have increasing demand for reproductive, maternal, neonatal, child, and adolescent health and nutrition and commodities. And then we have improving supply of all these commodities by strengthening regional capacity. And then the 3rd bucket is, assisting countries to develop a policy agenda that really places demography and gender as central to growth. And as I've mentioned before, another key thing to note with this program is that by the end of this fiscal year, over 2.2 billion in new investments would have been approved and designed to champion women across Africa. Next slide, please. So additional projects include Agile in Nigeria, which is the Adolescents Girls Initiative for Learning and Empowerment. I know Martin here on the call can expand more on that, but it's just a program dedicated to keeping girls in school and improving learning environments. And then there's another program in Madagascar, which is Human Capital Development Policy Operations, which is dedicating to improving the delivery of health and education services for the protection of women and children. And just to, give some closing remarks, Marina's been talking some of the inequalities that women face, whether that be in art and how they portray them. Women and girls really are the key to Africa's future. And I believe it's really important to emphasize that. And, investing in them makes sound economic and business sense. We've seen in so many cases how closing gender gaps really has a potential to enhance productivity, reduce poverty, and improve development outcomes. So this isn't really an issue that we can afford to waste time on, especially in Africa. Thinking about all the damage that COVID-19 has brought to the world, I think it's particularly important now more than ever that we focus on bolstering women's and girls' human capital in Africa, because they're usually the ones that are disproportionately affected during times of crisis. They're more likely to be involved in vulnerable forms of work, encounter mobility restrictions, they take care of their sick family members and out-of-school children, and they also face unequal access to distance learning. So these are just some of the realities that we have to keep in mind when we're creating projects that empower them. And I think some of the support that the bank is already providing is on that route. So thank you.
Thank you, Ruti. Yes, you can see here different sources, but we have been trying to be absolutely on time to leave you space for questions. I imagine you may have some questions, so if you want a more explanation from Ruti, from Martin, or from me about the project or about the artist, we are here for you. And you can write the question or you can unmute yourself and ask. We are happy to help. Or before I forget, if you want to be part of the mailing list, there are programs to know about these events. Just write at our program at worldbank.org, and then you will be part of the mailing list, and so you receive the invitation to every event. Okay, this is a question. If there will be a regular session. It will be regular in the sense that every month we will have an event, not in this format. So next month, what we are still debating, we will have another WebEx of this kind on another content, or we will have a visit. We will be able to organize a visit to a studio with an artist, and we will be able to interact with her directly. In August / September, we hope to have a roundtable with the winner of the blogger competition from the Africa region. So every month there will be something related to different aspect of the exhibition. Every week we will release the information about an artist, either a video or from the artist, an image of the artworks on the program Jammer pages, so you can see constantly something happening. You can follow that. We are preparing a catalog, so the idea is hopefully can take place physically. We can have an exhibition back in the spring 2021. If this is not possible, we will have only virtual exhibition and with the virtual catalog in the next spring. But it's like, you allow me the image, it's like we are cooking the dinner in front of you and we are serving the different dishes in parts, all the different courses, if you want, in phases, instead of giving you the final meal at the end of the exhibition.
We had another question. What is being done to help women increase validity of their platform in areas where the role of art in development is either diminished or lacking altogether? And this refers to artists of the diaspora.
Elena, I couldn't hear you, sorry.
I was reading one of the questions in the chat. You can also find it. What is being done to increase validity of women artists in areas where art in development is either diminished or lacking? Do we know? Do we have an answer?
Yeah,
We're finding one.
that is a very, very challenging question. This project is our attempt to do something. Consider that the resources of the art program naturally are extremely limited. So, for example, when we did Africa Now, the big service we did to the artists was to bring back curricula and sharing them with other curators and galleries and auction houses around the world, and to use the, if you want, the reputation of the bank, not as a cultural institution, but as exactly a non-cultural institution, to give credibility to our interest for these artists. So we are hoping the same will happen with some of these artists. Clearly, the world has changed now, and African art has already a market for itself. So going to specifically on your question, what has been done or we're trying to do for women artists, especially in the light of COVID, etc. At the moment, we're trying to build connection for them. To if we hear about a curator who is looking for a specific kind of artist, we bring them in contact. If we know about a scholarship, we bring them in contact. We do that on a daily basis, constantly, with artists from all over the world. We're constantly facilitating a connection among artists in whatever form possible and imaginable, because we see that as a public service we need to offer as an art program. Institutionally speaking, this project is our main project to support the artists at the moment.
And we have one more question. You hear me well? Is there any study on how art in Africa may be contributing to changes in mindsets regarding women's place in society?
Yeah, there are some studies. It's a little bit of a mix. There was, let me see if I can find the reference for you. Okay. It's not a study in the sense of something that can be used for a bank report, if you want, but a very famous study is providing a space of freedom women artists from Africa, but in fall. I can can write the reference when I have a moment in the space. That is, if you want, one fundamental research about the role of women in defining society in Africa, and how their role in changing society, if you want. There have been other studies, they're much more specific, if you want, country by country, and only for a few countries, about the art market. Mostly they are for South Africa because it's the strongest art market, and some of them are concerning women specifically.
This is a good point. Excuse me.
Here. If I focus on women artists, on women working in the art world in Africa, curators, galleries, owners, etc. No, this exhibition doesn't focus on women working in this field. I can tell you that the situation, for example, of curators, gallery owners, etc. in Africa has changed again dramatically in the last 10 years. I've seen these changes happening. For many of them, I'm happy. But it's not the focus of our research. Most of the research in these fields are done and published in the Journal of Cultural Economics. Doesn't focus so much about Africa. It's mostly focusing on North America and Anglo-Saxon world, if you want, not even continental Europe, but Anglo-Saxon world. But most of the research in these fields, even on the ownership of galleries and market and the female presence of that, is published there. Yeah, so Jean-Christophe is asking, would be interesting to involve some of them for talks. Is a possibility. We have a section, one of the areas we want to talk about is about entrepreneurship. I don't know if we will talk about entrepreneurships in the sense of curators and gallery owners, or we will talk about entrepreneurship in the creative industries. And at the moment, we were considering mostly fashion industry because that involves a larger number of women, and they've been very much on the forefront on the COVID situation, while gallery owners tend to be very small entities. So it's a choice. Can we support emerging artists through our work and personal action? Okay, another question is, how can we support emerging artists through our work and personal actions? That is a very good question. So if you want to support women artists in general, as you know, here in Washington, we have the Museum of Women in the Arts. That is a fantastic conduit to do that. You can support women artists through them. They have many initiatives. They promote many artists from different parts of the world through their programs. And they do very serious scholarly research. By the way, they have been collaborators for this project as well. Then on an individual level, if you are able to become the patron for one woman artist and make sure that she has the funds to print a little brochure about her first exhibition, for example, that or have a website or do something just to be seen, that is already a huge step in the right direction. Is especially for young artists are entering the market, the first step is the hardest one. Another issue I've noticed, many artists don't receive adequate education. So even if they finish a college degree in fine arts, they need a higher level of training to be really able to enter into the art market with tools able to support themselves. And especially for women, this becomes very challenging because they generally enter in the age in which the social pressure to drop that career and to essentially to marry and to start a family, etc., is very, very high. So if in that conjuncture, you are able to help them to find a scholarship and or a residency or something that help them to get that second level of education, that makes, again, a huge difference in their life. For Africa now, we were able to assist many artists to get scholarships and residencies and really change the life of a lot of people, but almost all of them were male. all the females were not able to leave the country. So that was very sad. Even if we worked very hard trying to promote female artists with Africa Now, and I have to say that was one of my regrets from that exhibition, that we practically didn't succeed in changing the life of almost any woman artist through that exhibition, but of many male artists, yes. It's much harder. It's much harder, unfortunately. The obstacles are much higher.
All right, so we're at 3 o'clock. Maybe we'll stop at this.
Okay. In that case, I would like to thank warmly Ruti and Martin, who have been wonderful partners in the Africa region, and certainly Sarah and Elena, who have been very gracious and very patient, and Juliana behind the scene, who have been working very hard on this presentation. And thank you for Julia and Roxana, who gave us suggestions to improve our WebEx for the future. So it's a learning process, so we take any advice in any kind. Thank you all, and please stay tuned. There will be more events to come. Bye-bye.